Let me explain something to you right now. Okay, here's a $10 bill. This is garbage. This is garbage. Your people in South Africa, you have your rand, right? That's going to zero. That's going to zero. This is going to zero too. Euros are going to zero. The yen's going to zero. The Chinese currency is going to zero. It's all going to zero against Bitcoin. If you don't understand that yet, you're going to be impoverished. You're going to be on the street. You're going to be begging. You're going to be out of business. You're going to be toast.
Max, do you know that it's a criminal offense to tear up?
Do you know that with the Bitcoin I have, I can buy any freaking senator or congressman I want? I make the laws. He who has the Bitcoin makes the laws, Rand. We're not going to just sit around and let the goddamn congressman tell us what to do. We've got the capital. We make the laws. We've got the Bitcoin. They don't. We got it. They don't. Do you understand?
I got you, Max. I got you. Thank you very much.
Bitcoin Top 100 Rich List from 3rd of June 2011. Here's a little video I made of the top 100. As you can see, it's they're all anonymous.
This is fantastic. This is the new Forbes fortune list, isn't it? These are the Bitcoin fortunes. And notice, yes, all numbers. It's pure anonymous. And this is the biggest story of this decade going forward, is the transition from the old way of doing business around the world to the Bitcoin way of doing business, which is purely anonymous. And this is the great achievement of the global insurrection against banker occupation. Bitcoin is the currency of the resistance.
You know, people say what backs the dollar, and according to Paul Krugman again in the New York Times, he says the Pentagon, or men with guns, you know, the Pentagon, I read that just to keep the Pentagon fueled with gas for their tanks, jets, et cetera, is $250 million a day is what they spend at the gas station. You know, it's like an incredible. So that's to fuel the Pentagon to defend the dollar, because, you know, the U.S. foreign policy is we want you to start using the dollar, and if you don't, we're going to bomb and murder, you know, your people. That's our foreign policy. That's the way it's been for decades. So, and that's all very inefficient. So, and the idea of entrepreneurs coming up with ever more evolved energy technologies is, you know, so exciting, and why that's the way it should be. We should be searching for these things, and that's really, really exciting. Bitcoin is moving the industry towards renewables. You know, the cheapest energy in the world right now is solar and wind. And this is what Bitcoin's tapping into. So it's forcing all these fossil fuels to look at Exxon and BP. Their stocks are crashing because their model is crashing. The fossil fuel industry is crashing. Renewables are really on the upsurge. And the Sun Exchange, yeah, they sponsor the Orange Pill podcast. They've got a brilliant model. They install solar cells, and they convert sunlight into Bitcoin, and goes right into your wallet. And while you're helping to to supply energy to projects like schools and factories and stuff like that. It's a brilliant project, and it's a great company. But that idea that Bitcoin is boiling the oceans, or that it's a waste of energy, is diametrically wrong. It's 180 degrees wrong. It's wrong. Bitcoin is actually green. It's a green energy. It's a green industry. If you understand really the dynamics of the global energy grid and how this is moving away from fossil toward renewable. Renewable is the cheapest. Something like 90% of the profitability or higher of miners comes from energy costs. So they are extremely sensitive. As Marshall Long in Texas says, he's in the energy arbitrage business. He's not in the Bitcoin mining business. He's in the energy arbitrage business. He's got to get energy under 3 cents a kilowatt, 2 cents, under a penny a kilowatt. How does he do that? By bringing efficiencies and putting out the companies that are inefficiently destroying the environment because they're fat, stupid, old, politically corrupt. They're all going to be disintermediated. So we want agile Bitcoin mining energy users to make the industry efficient, move over to renewables. And actually, in the case of the Sun Exchange, you know, you're monetizing sunlight. I mean, and they're paying like 10, 11% a year on their projects. These DeFi projects that offer 5 or 6%, and you're taking 100% risk. You know, go to the Sun Exchange, you're getting 9, 10, 11, 12% in some cases, and you're not taking, you know, that risk. You know, you're taking minimal risk. So, you know, why not just turn the sunlight into Bitcoin? I mean, Bitcoin is love. Bitcoin is.
Then broadcaster Max Kaiser. He explains how he ended up there.
So I come out and we're going to have a little match with somebody representing paper money, someone representing the banking cartel, the true evil in this world. And we'll see what happens at that point.
Max revealed he hadn't been practicing too much before the event, so we wondered how he was so confident.
Well, unlike some of these markets, like JP Morgan's activity or Goldman Sachs or HSBC, which are entirely rigged, this is only partially rigged.
Surely Max took down his bankster opponent using his cryptocurrency powers. In other words, his MaxCoin t-shirt.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the bankster. He can't stand the assault from the cryptocurrencies.
In this fight, in this arena, is really a good metaphor for what's happening on the global geopolitical front. Countries are now on a war footing. The battle is heating up.
Well, since Tuesday, more than 30,000 Bitcoins have changed hands in China. That's 4 times the usual trade volume and compares with just 300 exchanged in the United States.
Right, Mark Karpeles is the John Corzine of the Bitcoin world. He made a terrible bet on Bitcoin. Had he been able to hold his position, it would have been very profitable for him. But like John Corzine and his position in Eurobonds, the timing was bad. He ended up bankrupting MF Global. He did eventually get a stay of execution from Goldman Sachs and his friends in Washington because they can print all the fiat money they want to cover all the crimes that are being committed. But Bitcoin cannot be printed to cover up the crimes. So like real market, free market capitalism, this guy's going to have to actually face the music.
Well, exactly. Everybody's saying, well, there should be regulation, but now you compare it to John Corzine, just like Mark Karpeles, they actually made really excellent, wicked, cool bets. They made sure bets, but they both dipped into client funds. They both dipped into client funds to cover their losses. Now, John Corzine, despite all of the regulation, despite everything that happened post-Enron, where CEOs are supposed to know what's going on with their books, he pleaded ignorance. He said, I'm just stupid. I didn't know that this was going on, and he got out of jail free. Well, people are saying Mark Karpeles should have known. He apparently never audited his books once, they say, in the last 3 years. So he's alleging he's as stupid as John Corzine.
Well, in free market capitalist economies, you have something called the price signal. And under John Corzine, the price signal of the bond market was manipulated by his folks and friends in the various bankers around the world to make it look like there wasn't this massive fraud going on. In the case of free market capitalism of Bitcoin, the price signal of Bitcoin dropping 50% from a high tells us that there's in fact something going on that needs to be looked at. And now it's being looked at, and the dead wood is being cleaned out of the Bitcoin economy. People who say that Bitcoin is not regulated that's false. The Bitcoin is the most regulated currency in the world. It's called the Bitcoin protocol. That's the regulation. It disintermediates and it gets rid of the need for the CFO or the Serious Fraud Office or the SEC or anyone else, FinCEN. You don't need them because it's self-regulating in the truest sense of the word. It's like the equation E equals MC squared. There's nothing you can do to perfect it. It is what it is. It was discovered, and that's what it is. You don't need a regulator to come in and say we need to regulate E equals MC squared. Similarly, with the Bitcoin protocol, there's nothing any regulator can do to add or subtract from the fact of the protocol what it is. That's what it is.
What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the first decentralized digital currency. Bitcoins are digital coins you can send through the internet. Compared to other alternatives, Bitcoins have a number of advantages. Bitcoins are transferred directly from person to person via the net, without going through a bank or clearinghouse. This means that the fees are much lower, you can use them in every country, your account cannot be frozen, and there are no prerequisites or arbitrary limits.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's talk about Bitcoin. I see that you've been talking about it quite a bit lately. I find it really fascinating, Max. Give us a sense, how efficient is this really? Is it really able to fix the economic problems we face?
Well, efficient is a good word. First of all, it's up 200% this year. So the Dow Jones is hitting an all-time new low against Bitcoin. This is a currency that people are starting to gravitate to as a store of value realizing that the other currencies out there, like the dollar, the yen, and the euro, are just fiat currencies run by central banks who have the ability to print trillions and trillions in an attempt to debase their currency in what's called the currency war. Whereas with Bitcoin, there is a limited supply. It is a storehouse of value. It is cryptologically protected, so it gives users the benefit of making anonymous transactions. And yes, it is very efficient. You can send money anywhere in the world for a fraction of 1%, which is a lot cheaper than anyone else offers. So it's going to challenge the business models of the big banks, the so-called too big to fail banks. And let me add something else, Abby, is that this rise in Bitcoin shows you the real effects of the money printing that's going on at the Federal Reserve Bank. You know, Ben Bernanke, in his testimony before Congress, will say, well, we don't see any inflation, even though his CPI number that they use to gauge inflation is not really representative of a true basket of goods that the average American might experience. The average American is experiencing 8 to 10% inflation, and they're wondering, why would the Federal Reserve lie like that? So there's a lot of problems with what the Federal Reserve is saying, and this is drawing attention to Bitcoin, which is now a $400 million market, and it has room to become 1, 2, 5, 10% of the global Forex market. So that Bitcoin price, which last year was at $4, which is currently trading almost at $50, if it captures 10% of the global market, you could see Bitcoins trading for $100,000 a Bitcoin, $1 million a Bitcoin. That's the potential.
Let me ask you this. I mean, is there any, and I love the anonymity part of the Bitcoin. I think it really can get a lot of widespread appeal. But I mean, as it gains more traction, what kind of efforts could we see, or should we expect to see, rather, from banking industry and from, you know, these bank lobbying efforts to really block this? I mean, is it possible for them to really stifle the growth of this?
I don't think it is possible to stifle the growth, aside from just shutting off the internet completely. But even in that case, you could store your Bitcoin offline in a drive, in a thumb drive or something like that. So there really is no way to attack Bitcoin. And for this reason, it's gaining a lot of adherence. And just to point out, again, when you hear the words coming out of Ben Bernanke's mouth, in terms of there's no inflation out there, well, the Bitcoin price tells you that there is really inflation around the world as we see the price of Bitcoin, gold, silver, oil are all starting to ratchet higher. So Bernanke is clearly lying. And this is what's driving attention to something like Bitcoin, which is a true limited supply currency that has genuine attributes of a currency that is attracting now hundreds of millions and soon to be billions of dollars in interest.
It makes so much sense, Max. It's hard for someone like me who's grown up in this debt-based currency on a total crash course. I mean, it's a completely unsustainable model, which you have actually come out and said, you know, this is going to fail soon. I mean, we're not too far away from a total financial collapse here with this unsustainability. Why are you so sure that this is going to happen so soon?
Well, the Dow Jones, for example, hitting a new high. Well, the amount of debt backing the Dow Jones has hit a new high. So this is a rally based on margin or debt. The U.S. debt is at all-time high. The global debt is at all-time high. The global derivatives markets are at all-time high. $600 trillion in derivatives around the world. So if you look at the global economy as a system, because it has long since left the place of being tied to anything relating to supply and demand of tangible assets like gold, we're now really in a systems analysis to look at this global economy. You realize that the stress and the strain of the system by adding these hundreds of trillions of dollars worth of derivatives creates these episodes of systemic collapse. And we've had now 4 or 5 years of this rally. We've had now a period where people have grown complacent, and generally that's when you see the wheels start to pop off, and that's when you see markets go through a bit of a tumble. You know, they say markets climb up a staircase and fall down an elevator shaft. So this elevator shaft is about to open up, I think, pretty quickly here, and we're going to see another crash, and then people will say, oh, we never saw it coming, and they'll bail out the banks again, and the whole thing is repeated.
But of course, we hear these buzzwords, Max, from the corporate media: sequestration, fiscal cliff. I mean, all these things are kind of preventing us from seeing the bigger picture, what you're talking about right now. And as you just said, you know, the Dow Jones reaching record record high. Corporate America, CEOs making record profits while workers are making even lower wages. You just wrote a really great article that talks about how at this point corporate America could easily be paying $100 an hour for minimum wage. Talk about the concept of tying the minimum wage to the money supply.
Well, this is something I've been trying to communicate to labor for a number of years. They keep trying to tie their wages to inflation, but the inflation number is cooked, it's bogus. It understates inflation by a huge factor. They need to look at money supply and say, we want wages tied to money supply. That's how bankers are paid. Bankers are paid based on the growth in money supply. The government increases money supply by trillions of dollars, and the bankers pay themselves as a percentage of the growth in money supply. So as long as there's a Federal Reserve increasing money supply, workers should demand equal participation in such a fakakta economy by tying their wages to money supply. And if they did this over the past 20 or 30 years, minimum wage would be $100 an hour, $150 an hour. And you look at a company like Apple Computer, they've got $130, $140 billion in cash sitting there in the balance sheet. They could easily pay their workers $100 an hour and still be vastly profitable. So these companies have record amounts of cash. They have no idea what to do with all that cash. They end up recycling it into the bond market, creating a bond bubble. Why not just pay people? Why not just pay workers a wage that's tied to money supply growth? That's what I've been talking about. And I also sent you a story, Abby, about the Eric Holder's comments talking about banks and HSBC, basically reemphasizing the point that these banks are now completely above the law. He believes that to prosecute banks would jeopardize the global economy. He's creating a two-tier justice system. Banks don't have to adhere to any laws. Everyone else has to somehow comply with the law. This is very problematic and troubling, Abby.
Elaborate more. We have about 30 seconds left, but talk really quickly about what you're talking about, what scandal you're talking about.
Well, HSBC, a big bank in the UK, was caught laundering close to $400 billion in Mexican drug cartel money and laundering money for terrorists. Their defense was, you can't prosecute us because if you did, you would jeopardize the global economy. They signed off on this in the UK, and Eric Holder has just signed off on this. He has also said now that that's correct. And this also came out with Lanny Breuer, who's assistant district attorney in Washington, D.C., who also came out during a documentary and reiterated the point that we can't prosecute banksters because if we did, we'd jeopardize the economy. So this is a remarkable turn of events. It essentially legalizes financial terrorism, what Paul Moore, whistleblower in the UK for HBOS, he said that these guys in the banking system are responsible now for a financial holocaust.
Totally
100 million
absurd
people.
Logic. Too big to fail, also too big for trial. Max Kaiser from the Kaiser Report. Awesome to have you on. Hope to have you on again soon.
Sure, Abby.
If you found this video valuable, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more content, and share your thoughts in the comments below.